In 2019, TikTok was the second most downloaded publication in the world, right behind WhatsApp. An intuitive application sharing short and simple videos targeting young teenagers worldwide was bound to succeed. While it may have been the internet's laughingstock for a time, everyone has had to get used to this social network, which today targets much more than just very young teenagers. But like everything heavily used on the internet, unintended uses appear. Scandals linked to strange accounts, bizarre, unhealthy personalities, and creepy TikToks circulate globally, ranging from simple paranormal testimonies to the discovery of dark circles within the app. Let me take you deep into the depths of this site and help you understand or discover its darkest corners. Welcome to the hidden side of TikTok. Let's start with the first story that you've probably heard about. Number 1. Randonautica. On June 20th, 2020, a TikTok by username would hugely impact the internet. Before showing it to you, or rather showing it to you again because you've probably already seen it, I want to tell you about another application called Randonautica, which is directly linked to this case. The name of the application, Randonautica, is a contraction of random and nautica, literally the contraction of random and navigation. The Randonautica application gives its users totally randomly generated GPS coordinates, and I emphasize that because we'll come back to it, near them, with the objective of discovering new places, venturing into unconventional spots, and finding new things. The concept is cool, but obviously, with any cool concept of this kind, there will inevitably be excesses. The excess mainly comes from the principle of giving random GPS data. In June of that year, a gigantic controversy arose. Username is a young man from Seattle, Washington. He was 18 when he went with his friends to the coordinates indicated by the Randonautica application. Arriving at the location, they recorded a TikTok to show what they found. Here is the TikTok in question. Yes, it is indeed not one, but 2 dead bodies they found in that suitcase by the water. Here, we are not talking about a fake, meaning not a story created from scratch to scare you. No, this actually happened, and it is a real tragedy. They shouldn't have discovered that. It made the headlines of all the major newspapers. 10 days after the discovery, the bodies were identified as those of Jessica Lewis, 35, and Austin Wenner, 27, a young couple who had disappeared a few days earlier, between June 9th and 16. The murder was committed by gunshot, and the killer had not yet been 100% identified, although one man was extremely suspicious, so extremely suspicious that there was almost no doubt that he was the killer, because in fact very recently he was indeed judged guilty of the crimes. Keep that in mind, this was before writing the video, so the information came out recently. The man is a 62-year-old named Michael Dudley, who had been arrested recently. First, detectives recognized the suitcase as belonging to this man. This man is also the landlord of the young couple who were murdered. Neighbors reportedly called after hearing gunshots and screams at the old man's house on June 9th, 11 days before the bodies were discovered. Police went to the scene much later, after the bodies were identified, to find traces of blood in the house in question. It is therefore a true tragedy that occurred. Username explains in his subsequent TikToks that he is extremely traumatized by this, and we can understand why. Nevertheless, this is not the only strange discovery made with Randonautica, because from that moment on, many people armed themselves with the application and tried to go and search for coordinates. Now, of course, things must be taken with a grain of salt, because before this, there was no trend around Randonautica. But obviously, from the moment this happened, the trend was launched, and many fake videos proliferated. We must rely on the good faith of the people. Among the best-known testimonies, we have this man. The reason he left at the end is because he thought he saw a face. Also, this story of the woman who lost her cat, who after going to the Randonautica GPS coordinates found her cat. I think this one is a fake. There is also this woman who was led to witness a murder by gunshot before her eyes, and so on. A few other Randonautica TikToks that were found that I can show you. And we could continue to give plenty of examples. But what is the deal with this application? Well, it all has to do with the question of randomness. There was a controversy due to the application creator's response regarding the Randonautica controversy. It's simple. The creator explained that he was not responsible for these discoveries and that Randonautica was indeed random because many people were beginning to suspect that the application potentially had other objectives and that it intentionally sent people to unsettling coordinates to scare them. This was quickly debunked. The reason we stumble upon these kinds of things with Randonautica is indeed because with tons and tons of users, millions, it is inevitable that one person will be led somewhere they shouldn't have been. Even if there is a very small chance of stumbling upon such unsettling things, if there are many users, there is a 100% chance that something horrible will eventually be discovered with the application. But the problem is the app creator's response, who allegedly said that he would have liked to have been the one who discovered the corpse in question. When put in the context of the full sentence, it's much less atrocious, but when responding to a controversy, there are perhaps better ways to do it. Number 2, Nick Cimino, 68. TikTok has been a platform of choice for people who greatly appreciate the paranormal, the condensed aspect of the videos, the fact of starting the action right in the middle of phenomena makes it a perfect ground for the found footage format. It is the genre in its purest state, people sharing slices of daily life when things have already started. Many accounts are entirely dedicated to showing strange phenomena, presumably haunted places, or people whose lives are marked by this in their daily routines. The account, Nick Cimino 68, is a precise example. Nick started his account on August 28, 2019, with a series of TikToks explaining that he has always lived in this place and has believed since the beginning of his life that it is haunted. He could never understand why he always saw strange phenomena, things moving, unexplainable noises, voices, etc. But nothing seemed to explain it until he stumbled upon a bizarre door, a kind of trapdoor, which would lead him to a rather strange discovery. He explains that inside this door was a pile of small papers indicating tons of treatments that were reportedly given to patients between 1965 and 1985. The patients in question suffered from psychological illnesses such as schizophrenia, anxiety, psychotic disorders, psychopathy, etc., but all related to mental illnesses. Each of these cards mentions a certain psychiatric center called Kings Park, which exists. It's not a creation. It was a center that was known for experimenting on and torturing patients at a time when psychiatric centers in America were more like containers for people with problems, whom they did not seek to cure, but rather to protect from the outside. A lot of suffering occurred in this kind of place. Many atrocious things happened, and the Kings Park Psychiatric Center is just one witness. The cards showing treatments also show the first names, last names, numbers, and addresses of the patients, as well as the doctors. Since this happened between 65 and 85, it is quite probable that some of these people are still alive. But just as people began to offer Nick ideas to continue his investigations, notably the idea of buying what is called a black light, which would allow him to better see the cards, which are all white with raised writing that is difficult to read, he posted a TikTok shortly after announcing that he was abandoning one of his projects, contacting all the patients and doctors, and simply pursuing this discovery. He explains that being somewhat of a believer in all paranormal theories, he does not want to anger spirits. However, from then on, Nick's life began to be extremely marked by paranormal activity, with phenomena becoming more and more extreme both at his work and at home. He first posted a series of videos about his job. He is a night security guard at a restaurant. He explains that there have always been paranormal phenomena at his restaurant at night, but also occasionally during the day, although with much less intensity, and that he had never managed to capture them when they happened, until recently, when the phenomena in question intensified much more. We can see blinking lights, flying objects, footsteps, things moving, or the restaurant's jukebox malfunctioning and randomly playing music, and sometimes it's quite disturbing to watch. I really invite you to go see the videos for yourselves. They are quite creepy. And personally, I obviously think it's fake. Most of the things can be easily faked, especially with fishing wire. But what makes his new series created with TikTok quite cool is that the guy's acting is consistent and pleasant to watch. That is, he doesn't have over-exaggerated reactions. He laughs with his friends, which is what we would all do in this kind of situation. And even if we can say that it is sometimes a bit redundant and that there is perhaps a little too much activity in his life, it's still quite cool because the TikTok format format is a great format for sharing horror web series of this type. That's why I did this little portion of the video. In fact, what I really like about the TikTok format is already the very short side, so the information must be condensed. It must be presented factually, but also something very simple. You can pause a TikTok, but you can't skip seconds. You are forced to watch everything in order. So it will be interesting to see how he develops this. It's obviously fake, but he is not the only one to have made this kind of video. A very well-known account at the beginning of the TikTok story was Security1275, which was also an account in the same vein. Unfortunately, I didn't talk about it in detail because all the TikToks
Okay, I'm literally at work right now. I'm alone. That's my car. There is not one other car in the parking lot. Look, the freaking light's flickering from the reflection in the window. I don't know what's going on. I'm here alone, and this is what I deal with that I usually don't catch on camera. This is the light switch. Ready? Oh, I think I stopped it. Did I stop it? No, I didn't. I didn't stop it. I don't know what's going on, and this makes absolutely no... This is my security cameras. There's no one here, so I don't understand. Oh my god, Jesus Christ. Hello? Okay, something.
and she quickly got noticed on the internet because all her videos were roughly similar and quite creepy. She is Russian, and she quickly stood out for the total strangeness of her videos. She oscillates between strange, interpretive, contemporary dance videos, and then moves on to videos where she screams and gets angry alone in a mix of Russian and English that even native Russian speakers and absolute bilinguals in both languages absolutely do not understand. There is a great video that the English-speaking YouTuber's Atrocity Guide made on the subject, but to simplify concretely what she explains about the matter and what has been understood about the matter, the few phrases that could be understood by Russian-English bilinguals reveal quite creepy things. Notably, it talks a lot about control by the Russian government and a particular hold the Russian government would have on Ravenbatch, but not only her, also Ravenbatch's husband. Her husband's name is Maxim Belhov. He is a man who also posts many videos, some with Ravenbatch herself. What must be understood is that we are not dealing with something fake, an ARG, alternate reality game. This is legitimately a very frightening case surrounding a potentially schizophrenic person who is in serious danger. Obviously, it is difficult to believe the narrative that Maxim Belhov presents and what we understand about Anna Batskovich, but in this case, what he says would not be absurd given that it is happening in Russia, because Russia is a country that has a historical authority for using psychiatry, drugs, and torture to counter opponents of the regime. There was, for example, a syndrome called sluggish schizophrenia, a disease that has never been recognized by the WHO or any other country than Russia, which was used as a diagnosis for opponents of the Russian system simply to avoid political opponents by saying, well, they're crazy, it doesn't show yet, but they're crazy, and therefore they shouldn't be heard. Ravenbatch and her husband allegedly participated in an anti-government Russian demonstration long ago in 2013, and these are Maxim Belhov's words, so they must be taken with a large grain of salt. She was then allegedly interned in a psychiatric center, which was done with many other demonstrators from that period. But since she started having breakdowns well before that, it's quite difficult to believe that this is the beginning of her problems. Nevertheless, what she and her husband say is that she was drugged with psychedelic substances that would have permanently impacted her psyche. Very little is known about Anna. There are many people who theorize that she was a well-known dancer, as there was also a dancer named Anna Batskovich who stopped her dancing career due to deterioration in her mental state, which fits the situation quite well. Unfortunately, there is no proof of what is being claimed. We just know that a dancer with that name reportedly existed. Nevertheless, this lead does not seem absurd given the contemporary dance she performed performs, which apparently, according to 2 or 3 dance professionals, but you know very well what professionals on the internet can look like, say that her movements are quite precise and that there is a professional quality that is felt despite an obvious physical fatigue that comes with age. In short, it seems that there is a strange story with this couple, possibly suffering from folie à deux, a psychiatric illness which suggests that the mental disorders of one person will rub off on the person they live with, creating a kind of double influence of madness. In short, something quite crazy, and many strange things are happening around Anna Batskovich. For example, very recently, videos she made a year ago have reached up to 40 million views, and they are like who cares videos. Look at this one. It's 13 seconds of nothing, and yet it has 40 million views. We think they are bots, but where does that come from? Why hasn't it been deleted if it's bots? What is interesting about these videos? I haven't found anything on this subject. Another one has 13 million views, and why? And the second strange thing, Ravenbatch moved from YouTube to TikTok for a short period with 2 different handles. At I Watch This Currently and at 12 HXZWMHRNA. These TikToks circulated enormously because they were truly creepy. And in this case, there is both classic Ravenbatch, meaning interpretive dance. It seems that she is sane enough to manage to put music on her TikToks, which is rather positive, I think, but also this kind of TikTok, which worried people a lot. In short, TikTok has given enormous visibility to this very niche madness on the internet. All we can hope is that this person gets better and that we can know more about this strange case, this strange couple. And all we can really hope is that she finds help, which is unlikely to happen given that, unfortunately, being Russian and being in opposition to the Russians, it will be difficult to establish any communication with them, something that has probably never been done correctly over the years. All we can hope is that she gets better. Number 4. Dark TikTok. I will take the opportunity to calm things down a bit because Ravenbatch was a big piece. Today I want to talk to you about the whole aesthetic of fear on TikTok because there are some very interesting things happening there. I wanted to include this section to talk about this whole eclectic, bizarre portion where people cultivate a kind of strange aesthetic that is based not on pure fear, but indeed on the incomprehension that people can have when this kind of thing appears on what is called the For You page, the recommended page, a bit like on YouTube. It will also allow me to talk about lots of little isolated cases that could not have made up a single part of a hidden side of TikTok, but which you suggested to me and which are very interesting. For example, many people talked a lot about the hashtag #CommitAthaTrees tag, which circulated enormously. It's a kind of strange meme in which people try to create a sect around trees. People have linked it to satanic delusions, but concretely, it's just a kind of eclectic delusion where people who are not in on the joke don't understand it, and those who are in on the joke know that it doesn't really make sense. I think that's mostly the question. But what interests me is the aesthetic. The highly saturated colors, verging on red, the saturated sounds. I won't play the audio of the videos because of copyright. It is the kind of cursed aesthetic that is used a lot on TikTok to destabilize people or cause discomfort. But what is interesting about this aesthetic is that people try to create kinds of TikTok strata, sorts of alternative TikToks, where people can share much darker and more difficult to understand references for newcomers. Many TikToks posted under the hashtag dark TikTok or hashtag deep TikTok maintain this meme-like idea that there would be a more hidden, darker part of the site where quite illegal things can appear that would not appear on the For You page that everyone has. Strange videos, sometimes even snuff. Lots of little urban legends that are scattered throughout the site, but which are mostly overused to create memes. But sometimes, legitimately, some of these videos can have an aesthetic that I find interesting and creepy. I am thinking notably of the significant use of very saturated, very black and red colors, intentionally using aesthetics of perverted childhood or satanic delusions. In short, this new aesthetic that I'm telling you about, with the objective of scaring and simply destabilizing without necessarily having a story to tell. I find that quite interesting, and I even find it rather cool. But sometimes, some mediocre things things happen. I am thinking notably of the hashtag #MurderTikTok. Many videos were posted under this tag that caused a bit of controversy on the site. I am thinking notably of the famous fish video. This might not mean much to you, but it's a video where basically someone puts a fish and many things in a liquid, probably an acid that dissolves things enormously. I'm censoring the video, but concretely, this video really disgusted many people. And under the hashtag #MurderTikTok, there was also a controversy with a video of people who seemed to be throwing a corpse into a river. Fortunately, it was just an out-of-context video taken during some dissident photo shoot, but legitimately, people were afraid that this kind of thing would not be moderated. And it is true that it is difficult to differentiate between something that could be legitimate and something that would not be in the hashtag #MurderTikTok trend, even if today it is mostly used to make memes around it. Many people enjoy posting, I don't know, videos of animal torture, and it's not moderated. Also, anecdotes, notably with friends judged by the states of this project that I had to make the hidden side of TikTok video, and they mentioned to me that, for example, they had managed to find a TikTok of a guy who just defecated and it was not moderated. So many things are posted on TikTok that moderation is almost impossible to perform, and it is not impossible that things slip through the net. Number 5. The darkest side, uncensored content and grooming, and this is the subject of the 5th part. Now this is going to be a more serious part. This is serious, what can happen, because it is an application that is too widely used and moderation is almost impossible. There have been many serious things that have happened with the application, notably quite serious cases of harassment. It is a fact that TikTok was for a long time, and still is a bit of a haven. It's simple, the user base of the site is very young, and especially at the beginning of the application, it was really people between 11 and 14 years old who used the app. Sometimes we see even younger people making TikToks. The question of whether or not they should be on the app is not necessarily the point here, but one thing is certain. There is a danger in being on this kind of platform, especially